so many years, haunted by hatred, trapped by fear. I'm in a box. I've got no place to go. If I follow my mind, I know I'll slaughter my own. Help me, I'm the prisoner. Won't you hear my plea? I need somebody, yeah, to listen to me. I beg you, brothers and sisters, I'm counting on you, yeah. Black babies in the womb, shackled and bound, chained by the caveman, keeps beauty down, smacked on the ass when they are squalling and wet. Heir to a spineless man who never forgets, never forgets that he's a prisoner. Can't you hear my plea? 'Cause I need somebody, Lord knows, to listen to me. I'm a stranger to my son who wonders why his daddy run.
It's a peace and love, sister. Oh, because I hit you with the email. Did you check the email? You didn't see that there? Okay. I'm on right now. I'm going to talk to you as soon as I finish. Okay. All right, peace. Peace and love, family. Welcome again to the NEPPC podcast. This is Brother Frank. You know, my brother Abdul Haq Islam. You know, he's dealing with some health issues and he'll be back with us shortly. Today's episode, we focus on Afeni Shakur. Afeni Shakur is a Black Panther Party member. For those who know, she has given us Tupac Shakur. She has given us a person who has impacted many lives. Afeni Shakur was born in North Carolina. From there, she moved to the North, as many who were in that struggle for so-called better life. Afeni Shakur was very brave, and she took a position when she was in the Black Panther Party member. For those who don't know, she was part of the Panther 21. Those were a number of Black Panther Party members, her along with 20 other Black Panther Party members who were brought up on some serious charges, because with the help of a provocateur, agent, informant who infiltrated the organization. Afeni Shakur took a position and defended herself. That is the highest form of self-determination, and she did this uh, to defend herself and her comrades. And I think that just that alone says a lot about her bravery. If anybody did any research on the history of Black Panther Party member, you would see the significant contribution and participation of females, our sisters. When we look at how the programs work when you're dealing with providing food for our children and education for our children, the Black Panther Party social programs had those are nurturing attributes, and that is pretty much associated with our sisters, our mothers, those who understand the importance and the power of doing such. And so today's episode, we focus on that. We focus on how her example is embodied in a number of our sisters. And we salute those who participate in the struggle to free our political prisoners. We are very thankful for their participation because it takes a certain level of bravery to actually do that work. As in every episode, I do preparation prior to me coming on so that I can inform many people about about what's happening, right, with our political prisoners struggle. We inform you about what we know that's going on, and we inform you about ways that you need to get involved. We encourage people to write. And when we talk about Afeni Shakur, we know that she did not stand on the sideline. In this book right here, written by current city councilman. Oh, hey, sister, peace and love.
Hey, peace and love, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great. I went past the introduction. I was letting people know about the example of Afeni Shakur. Every episode when I come on, I try to educate the people about that because, the history of our sisters, we have to salute our sisters. We know that the Black Panther Party members was mostly sisters, from what I understood, and I stand to be corrected if I am incorrect. But sister, you on, and I just want to salute you for embodying that powerful sister strength that is needed for us brothers to do what we do. Thank you for coming on, my sister.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me the opportunity to speak to your listening audience. I think that it is important to highlight the histories, but also hear from women. There's a lot of misinformation that exists just about the history and her story of Black folks, Africans born in America. So it is up to us to correct it. We can't depend on other people to do it. We must do it.
Absolutely. We have to be self-determined in all aspects of our life, right? When we educate our children, when we educate our family members, right? Because we have so many distractions in this world we live in. Like I'm currently reading this book about the power of patience, and it talks about, we have a low attention span because of being over bombarded with information. A lot of the information that's not even applicable to our very lives. It's not going to change us in any shape, form, or fashion. So when we deal with this struggle for paying attention to what's really relevant, is we have to take the initiative to educate ourselves, and we have to tell ourselves and our family that this is what's really important, that this is only going to change what's going on.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I would like to add that I don't think we have low attention spans, because when you look at people on their phones, they can be on their phone for hours, scrolling, just being on the phone. It's what we prioritize as important. It's what we prioritize as being relative or relevant to our lives. So freedom is not on the mind of a lot of people because, one, they think they're free. Two, we're not taught to believe in fighting for freedom and self-determination. So we get caught up in these weapons of mass distractions. I don't think I see kid. I worked in. I'm retired from this Department of Miseducation, but I see how young people are on their phones, and people say that they have attention deficit disorder. No, they can pay attention to those phones, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. It's what we're choosing to pay attention to. So we who know have to help to, like they did 40, 50 years ago, make revolution irresistible, make the movement irresistible, that people want to be a part of it instead of being a part of what this, capitalist system tells people they should be a part of.
Yeah, that's a very important point. We have to prioritize. Whatever weapons we have to use it to make sure that we inform each other about what we need to do. And that's why every week we commit ourselves to the struggle to free our political prisoners, because aside from being martyrs, our political prisoners are that highest level of making a commitment to an idea or a principle that's not about yourself. It's about what you belong to, your people, your nation. And, that's why we make this consistent commitment to struggle to free our political prisoners, because an expression of self-determination is that our political prisoners are freedom fighters. They're not criminals. They're not terrorists. What motivated you to be involved in the work to free our political prisoners?
Learning our history and her story, learning about people who resisted oppression, resisted injustice, resisted that period of enslavement, knowing that, despite the distortions and mythology of U.S. history, Africans didn't go along with slavery. Right, their enslavement. People resisted from the first kidnapping into those slave dungeons, onto those auction blocks, onto the plantations, and from then until now. So it's like, once you can't go back. It's like, what do you do with once you know?
That light is turned on, right?
Absolutely. And then when we talk about, as you say, political prisoners and talking about women, right? Yuri Kuchiyama, who is, she's an ancestor now, but she was a survivor of the Japanese concentration camps when the U.S. Government and military put people of African descent in those concentration camps when they were at war with Japan. So Yuri survived that. And when they were released out of there, she came to New York, and that's where she raised her family and got involved in the Black Liberation Movement. She was the only Japanese person of Asian descent. She was very close to Malcolm, right? She was the only Japanese person in his organization of Afro-American Unity. And she was a great supporter and advocate for the release of political prisoners. And one of the things she said is that political prisoners are the heartbeat of struggle. Like, they're the heartbeat.
Wow.
They gave of themselves. They gave of their lives. They gave up their careers. They gave up their families. They gave of their blood and labor and sweat and whatever imagined relative freedom we who are out here in minimum security, because that's what I call this. We live in a police state. We are all in prison here. We are all being surveilled. We just have more freedom to, quote, freedom, end quote, to move around than people who are held behind the wall. But you can't go any place in this city or country without being surveilled, without being watched, right? Kids get stopped on the street. Where's your ID? So all of that's not freedom, right? You send your kids to the store. You don't know if they're going to come back because police terrorize and murder us. So that it's not free. But they understood that, and they were willing to sacrifice everything in the fight for freedom. So when Yuri Kuchiyama says they're the heartbeat of struggle, they are. And so once you know about them, then you must do something to fight on their behalf, because that's the only reason why they're in prison. And they're in prison because resistance is criminalized, particularly as it relates to Black resistance. The COINTELPRO FBI with J. Edgar Hoover waged a vicious war on the revolutionary struggles of the 1960s and 70s, but he was particularly murderous and brutal and terroristic on the Black Panther Party. All movements suffered, but when it came to Black people, he had a particular hatred, disdain, waged a particularly vicious war on Black people. And so veteran members of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army have historically been the largest group of political prisoners from those, and prisoners of war from those revolutionary struggles.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I like the fact that you brought up COINTELPRO, because many people are not informed about COINTELPRO. One of the things that I was inspired prior to me really being involved in political prisoner work is that I seen you at the tribute to the ancestors, and you spoke about Sekou Odinga at the time when he was still incarcerated, and you spoke very passionately, and that really resonated with me as far as what a person should how a person should approach struggle or something of interest to them. And I would ask you, how would you what motivated you to be as committed and dedicated as you were and are to freeing our political prisoners, as I seen you on that stage that day?
Well, it has a lot to do with, Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. We don't know about political prisoners because we're not taught about them. We're taught that this is a country of freedom and democracy. So what? Well, there are no people, quote, fighting for freedom. And so that was like, it comes from my heart, from my spirit, knowing that this exists, knowing that we have a right to fight for freedom. We have a right to struggle for our self-determination and be a self-determination, to determining people. We are a nation of people. We are colonized people, and people want the yoke of colonialism taken off their neck. They want that. We want that. And so reading about it, right? But then not just having the theory, but the practice, right? Meeting political prisoners, going to visit political prisoners, communicating via letters, writing back and forth to political prisoners. It made them more real than just reading about something in the past, right? History is not just the past. History is in the present. We are living history, because someday people are going to be reading about what was happening in 2023. They're going to read about that in 3033. And what was it like? What were people doing? How were Black folks fighting for their self-determination and freedom? So knowing that, making political prisoners real by sitting in the visiting room across the table, touching them, laughing with them, eating with them, meeting their families, all those things make it real. So history and Black resistance is not just a theoretical idea. It is the practice of people's lives. So when you become immersed in that, well, I speak for myself, becoming immersed in that idea and that principle, then because I knew better, then I had to do better. And so part of the doing better was, okay, so now, we say African people, each one teach one. So now I know, then I'm going to make sure that other people know. And everywhere I go, I'm going to speak to the idea and the existence that despite what you don't know, despite the denial of the United States government, there are political prisoners and prisoners of war who are captured behind those lines, behind those prison walls. And when people say, what war? The war that has been waged on African people ever since the first kidnapping in 1619, because the war has continued in different forms. The first one was kidnapping us. And then it has continued with every subsequent U.S. social economic policy that they have implemented. So from the so-called war on drugs to the so-called war on terror to the so-called war on immigration, all of these things have been euphemisms for war being waged on Black, brown, and indigenous people. And from that, because repression breeds resistance. So when people are oppressed and repressed, because we have a human right to freedom, and they're always going to be people that take up that mantle of freedom. Like Harriet Tubman said, I have the right to two things, freedom or death. And if I couldn't have one, I was going to have the other. And so our political prisoners understood that principle, and they carried it on. They didn't create Black resistance. They just carried it on in their lifetime. So it is up to all, I believe, and many of us believe, it is up to all of us to carry on the part of the Black radical tradition of resistance in the ways that we can in the time that we have.
Wow, yes, you mentioned about writing political prisoner, and I thought that resonated a lot with me, because I know as I got involved in political prisoner work, I wrote Jalil Abdul Muthar King. He would write me back, and as we started to write each other, exchange ideas, one of the things that he asked is what was my story. He wanted to know more about me, so I proceeded to tell him my story about how I got involved in this work. And then we started to exchange ideas. I got my son involved. My son wrote a letter. So it became a family event, a family affair. And he became a part of that family. He was incarcerated, and I was going to struggle to try to bring him home, try my best to do what I could. I was going to challenge myself to become more committed each day, become more creative each day, because it's about being creative. And I remember bringing his story to somebody who was part of a student union organization. And when I told her about his case, I think she might have got a little scared or something. But anyway, that was just about me being creative and me making sure I did everything that I could think possible to raise awareness about him being incarcerated. And then when he finally came home and I got an opportunity to meet him, because it was like some young person meeting some rock star or something like that. So, I was kind of like shocked, and a bit nervous, you know what I mean? So I attempted to approach him, and he said, you don't have to introduce yourself. I know who you are, brother. You're doing great work. And I appreciated that. It made me feel good about the work that I was doing, because our political prisoners are my heroes, because of the level of commitment that they express. And I think that our children need to be made known about our political prisoners. I know one of the things that this platform allowed me to do is bring an idea to people who are not informed about political prisoners and ask them about connections. And that's one of the things that I'm doing, is I'm struggling to make a stronger bond with the community of Queensbridge. And that relationship is growing, is becoming stronger. In fact, the banner that we had put up in Queensbridge at a place called The Hill is still there. It's an open letter that Sundiata Cody wrote to Queensbridge. And how would you say the importance is to building a relationship between political prisoners and a community is?
It is incredibly important. African people believe and have practiced in my lifetime and lifetimes before me, it takes a village. So it takes a village for us to do this. And the reminder of, like, the essential part of political prisoners is, in every struggle in the world, political prisoners are a part of that struggle. People make the release of political prisoners part of their demands. When they say we want freedom for our political prisoners. We don't just want freedom for ourselves. And so that, it's like when we say each one teach one, we start with the idea. You said the young sister who you felt like maybe she was afraid. That was deliberate, because that's what COINTELPRO did, to separate and isolate and alienate and instill fear and terror in people. So there was a disconnect because political prisoners, the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, all those movements, they were so criminalized and demonized in the corporate media. You know, it's like what Malcolm said. Be careful of the media because they will have you hating your friends and loving your enemies. And so that's what this capitalist system has done. Many of us don't know that our political prisoners are our heroes, or we think that it's okay to celebrate and recognize people who resisted in armed ways, right? Harriet Tubman resisted. She carried a gun and she said, move or die. She was ready to defend herself, but she's gone. So people can prop her up and they can mythologize her and commodify her and distort her legacy. So what we can worship, quote, at the altar of Harriet Tubman or Nat Turner, who took up arms with clubs and bats and machetes, right? But he's gone. So we can say his name, say her name, and say all those other Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Nat Turner. We can say all those people's names without fear of retribution because they're gone. But how about those people who are in the living, who are right now alive and where they are simply for having done the same thing that Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner and Frederick Douglass and people like that have done? So the first thing we do is make people aware. And then it's figuring out everybody's not going to do the same thing, but everybody can do something. Some people may write. Some people may go to visit. Some people may make a phone call for sign a petition. Some people may make music. Some people might write a poem, right? Everybody can do something. Everybody's not going to do the same thing. So it's like people figuring out what can they do that makes them feel that they are comfortable in doing, because we don't want people to do what they're not comfortable doing, but recognize that this government wants people to be separate from our political prisoners. That's why they have been, I see a scroll going on the bottom of your screen where you notice that people have been in prison since 1971. There are people who are not even born in 1971, right? So they do that deliberately to keep people inside. You mentioned Jaleel. Jaleel been in prison for 50 years. That was deliberate. How many times was he denied parole? Over a dozen times. That is deliberate to keep people separate from the people, the village, right? The community, and those people behind the wall. I just read a quote earlier today that Audre Lorde, the scholar and activist and mother and warrior poet, she said, without community, there is no liberation. So they have worked, that's a quote, right? This system, capitalist system, as I think Charles Barron calls it, pernicious capitalism or predatory capitalism, one of those words, because it ain't just capitalism, it's dastardly capitalism, right? They do everything to separate us from community, to separate us from each other. Like Malcolm said, who taught us to hate ourselves? Who taught us to deny who we are, right? We should be thankful for those political prisoners who dreamed another world was possible for us, who said that children should not be hungry in a country that calls itself the richest country in the world, who said that people should have access to free and affordable health care and decent housing, right? That's what they dreamed, and that's what they fought for, and that's what they sacrificed for. And for that, they were criminalized. Some were assassinated, some were driven into exile, and others were in prison.
Yes, indeed. You're very right on so many different levels. And I think that that's why, it's important for us to have continuous discussions around political prisoners. And that's why we have to be creative. You said, if you're a writer, write. If you're a singer, if you're an artist, draw. We have different things that we can use to express our talents, and we have to use those talents to raise awareness for our political prisoners. So when they go to the board, if the first time they went to the board they had 1,000 letters of support, and then the next time we want to have 2,000 letters. The next time after that, if they not, we want 3,000. Right? We want to double the numbers. So now we raise the contradictions. Right? We say that, okay, you're denying these people, but the community wants them home. And the taxpayers who paid for you to be able to have a prison industrial complex system, they want to be heard, and they want their demands met. And that's why we need to really critically analyze our work when it comes to political prisoners. We got to make connections where we can make connections. We got to be creative where we can be creative. We got to, if you go to a masjid, make sure that they are aware of political prisoners. Make sure that comes up in the discussion. Because if you're talking about profits, and you're talking about the prices that these prophets paid during their time, then that relates directly to political prisoners. If you go into a church and you're talking about anything dealing with righteousness, you need to address liberation. You need to address liberation theology. You need to make sure that political prisoners are discussed in your place, wherever you're at. Talk about the struggle for justice. Talk about political prisoners. But sister, those are my closing marks. You have any closing words, sister? Appreciate your time, your effort, your passion, and Black Power salute to you.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you for inviting me here, for listening, for your listening audience. And, the freedom of our political prisoners is very much tied to our own freedoms. We are not individuals. We are a nation of people that want freedom, that, fight for our self-determination. And so, there's a refrain that people say, free them all. And that's what we do. So it's okay. There's an African proverb that says it's okay to not know. What is not okay is to not want to know.
Excellent way to close out. Thank you, my sister. Peace and love.
Thank you, brother. Peace and love to you. Power to the people.
No doubt. What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them all.